Welcome, everyone, to this webinar brought to you by the Israel Defense and Security Forum, IDSF. In Hebrew, our name is Habitchonistim. IDSF is a movement of reserve officers and operators from all branches of the Israel Defense Establishment who believe that strong national security priorities and staunch Zionism are necessary for Israel to be the eternal homeland of the Jewish people. Thank you to all of our viewers and supporters for tuning into these war briefings. It is very important to us at IDSF that we can share with you war updates and analysis about this war in Israel, and that we can connect our experts with you in these very candid briefings. We are joined today by Brigadier General Amir Avivi, the founder and chairman of IDSF, and Lieutenant Colonel Maurice Hirsch. Maurice is the director of the Initiative for Palestinian Authority Accountability and Reform in the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs, and a senior legal analyst at Human Rights Voices. He served for 19 years in the IDF Military Advocate General Corps. In his last position, he served as the director of the military prosecution in Judea and Samaria. And he is, of course, a member of IDSF. Thank you both for joining us today. We'll begin, General, with you. What can you share us that is happening now in the war?
So, as we know, in the last few days, we have seen the release of hostages every day. It couldn't have happened without the massive ground incursion of the IDF and the results in the north of Gaza. Hamas needed desperately a ceasefire to recover, to organize, and because of that, it was willing to release children and women that we wanted, of course, to bring home. This is the government's responsibility to bring all the hostages back home. So in Israel, of course, everybody is really excited and happy to see the children and women coming back home. Basically, we're on the verge of finishing the release of the first 50 hostages, and there is an option to continue releasing every day 10 hostages more. For us, of course, every hostage is meaningful. For the Hamas, this gives them more time, and they really believe and they are hoping that the more days there is a ceasefire, the war will end. Hamas wants to end it here and now, and we want to destroy them. Now, the government, the Prime Minister, the Minister of Defense are saying every day, again and again, we are going to destroy Hamas. It doesn't matter if we need to wait a week, 2 weeks, whatever is needed to bring the hostages, but when this ends, we are renewing our offensive and basically taking over Gaza and destroying Hamas. And Hamas, of course, is trying to do everything to prevent that. They believe that there will be international pressure. They are hoping that the dynamics will bring a reality where the ground incursion will stop. At the moment, it seems that both the government and the army are very determined to do the job. Of course, there will be repercussions, and of course, we'll pay a price for waiting. We are seeing Hamas getting organized, regrouping, taking munitions, organizing itself. It's obvious that there will be a price for a certain extent for this waiting period, this ceasefire, but this is part of the risk we're taking to bring the hostages back, and the soldiers are in high alert. Soldiers are inside Gaza, in the northern part. They have organized in defense, trying to really prevent Hamas from attacking. Until now, we had a few incidents where we had to open fire locally in some places in Gaza, but overall, we didn't have till now any major attack or any casualties, talking about the soldiers. So this process is continuing. The Prime Minister emphasized that he's definitely for continuing to release hostages and taking a few days more. How many more? We don't really know. I can say that the forces at the moment are getting their orders and preparing for the attack, continuing the attack in the north of Gaza, and also extending the attack to the south. Everybody is getting organized. In the north, Hezbollah basically wants the war to end and Hamas to stay. So they are going along with Hamas. They said, okay, if Hamas is doing a ceasefire, we are doing also a ceasefire. Let's calm things down. Let's end this now. And this is what they're trying to do. It's not going to work for them, but this is what they're doing. Now, the big question will be, what will happen when we start attacking again, and especially when we start moving south? What will happen in Gaza, talking about how well Hamas is organizing itself now, and also what will happen with Hezbollah. Will Hezbollah, when they see that we are actually really determined to destroy Hamas, will they change their policy and go fully into war? We don't know. We don't know what will happen. So we are waiting to see. Meanwhile, in Yemen, the Houthis are trying to really disrupt the freedom of movement of the ships. They apprehended 2 ships, and finally US forces intervened, released one of the ships, also captured some Houthi terrorists. And I think that in one way this is very dangerous, but on another hand, this is creating a reality where the world understands that what the Iranians are doing, this is a global threat. This is not just about them fighting Israel. They are really trying to undermine the interests of the whole West. And in this sense, the involvement of the US with the Houthis is good. And also, everybody understands that this is Iran standing behind this behavior. We're seeing, rise of anti-Semitism. We're seeing many demonstrations around the world. But talking about governments, for the most part, especially the US, but also many countries in Europe, are supportive of Israel. They understand that we need to do the job, that we need to continue the fight, and that we must win against Hamas. If we don't, this will be devastating for Israel. But also this will have repercussions talking about the West overall. So really, we need to win. If Hezbollah doesn't intervene, there will be a big question what to do with Hezbollah. We have basically 3 options. One is bringing the forces and threatening to go in if the UN resolution 1701 is not implemented, meaning pushing Hezbollah north. The other option, of course, is going to war with Hezbollah. And the third option is, before going to war, signing the peace agreements, building a coalition with the US and the Sunni world, and then approaching the Iranian Hezbollah Houthi issue as a coalition. And there is no one good answer what is the right path, and this is something that we in IDSF are going to also discuss in depth with the government, with the Prime Minister, really analyzing all the options and thinking about what's the right thing to do. So Moshe, suggest let Maurice join.
Thank you, General. Lieutenant Colonel Maurice Hirsch, thank you for joining us. We'll go to you now. The General spoke a little bit about what the aftermath of the ceasefire could look like in Gaza. Are you able to discuss that also? What will happen when the fighting resumes?
So I think the hope of everyone is that the ceasefire doesn't necessarily go on for too long, that obviously we use the ceasefire in the best possible way to get as many hostages out, but an extended ceasefire that goes on for more than the initial 10 days agreed by the government, I think would pose a real danger to then renew the fighting. I think the international pressure would then grow, saying, well, you've killed a lot of Palestinian terrorists already. Now you've enjoyed the fruits of an extended ceasefire, and maybe now you should reconsider and allow Hamas to stay on. I think those are the real dangers. I think that, as General Avivi said, at the moment there seems to be real determination, both on the side of the IDF and on the side of the government, that the operations will continue on after the 10-day period, or at least, or as long as the 10-day period. There's the initial 4-day period, and then possible extensions for more hostages to be released. So I think that could be a potential danger, and we hope that it won't be. I think obviously everyone understands, and it's taken into account that these first 4 days have been used by Hamas not only to release hostages, but also to reinforce their positions, to bring in fuel, to help them continue on fighting, and to, I would assume, take most of the humanitarian aid and divert it for their own purposes, as they've done in the past. So I think that's something which was necessarily taken into account as part of the agreement for the ceasefire.
Now, every day, people here in Israel, I'm sure abroad, are fixed to the TV stations as they report on the updates of the hostage deals. And it seems like every day Hamas is finding little ways to break the deal in terms of the timing, in terms of splitting families. Is that a strategic decision on their end, or is that just the nature of Hamas?
I think it's both. I think it's a connection of both. The fact that we're talking about a homicidal, genocidal terrorist organization who not only instills terror by actions of murder, rape, burning people alive, as it did on the 7th of October, but also using not a small amount of psychological warfare, showing videos of the hostages, which really the world knows are completely fake. When you see hostages saying, well, we blame Prime Minister Netanyahu, you can just imagine the Kalashnikov rifles pointed at them as these hostages are being used and abused by Hamas. And the pictures that we've seen, even of the transfer of the hostages to the International Red Cross, with the terrorists saying to the children, don't forget to wave. Really, they're using and abusing the hostages as terrorist organizations do. And I think they're going to continue on doing it. This is definitely a strategic decision in order to try and control the situation. That's what the terrorists are trying to do. They're trying to control what's happening. So really, the idea of a written agreement that you expect a terrorist organization to respect is somewhat of a misnomer. They're terrorists. They don't respect human life. So why would they expect or respect the word that they gave? So I think that's part of this general idea, and we will see this going on all the way through. They understand that the hostages are Israel's really soft underbelly, and especially with children and women and grandmothers. These are the way that they ensure that they guarantee their popular support by releasing terrorists in order to get the hostages released. This is, as I say, the nature of the beast.
Right. Now, you recently shared on social media, and I'm going to try to dig up a link, maybe you have it, of a poll that you conducted with regards to the belief of Palestinians in their support for Hamas and jihad. Are you able to share some of those results with our viewers?
Yeah, so we're talking about a poll that was released just a few days ago by a Palestinian organization called Arwad, and really it was looking at attitudes of Palestinians since the start of the war, and really what we're seeing there is truly, really truly horrific. I just put a link in the chat. We're seeing massive amounts of support for the massacre itself. 75% of the Palestinians polled said that they support the massacre. They express very clearly their idea that they don't see Israel continuing to exist. Their goal for the end of the war is not a one-state solution where the Palestinians are incorporated into Israel and given Israeli citizenship, not a two-state solution, but a one-state solution, Palestine with no Jews. They don't obviously explain what they're going to do to the Jews, but I think when you put together the events of the 7th of October with the massive support of the population, and again, this isn't a poll conducted within the terrorist organizations. This is a poll conducted in the wider Palestinian population. This is the product of the constant incitement, constant dehumanization of Jews, constant denial of Israel's right to exist that is expressed both by the Palestinian Authority and by Hamas. Really, between those two organizations, there isn't, as they say in terms of Israeli and American policy, there's no daylight in between those two organizations. They both seek the destruction of Israel. They just disagree on who's going to lead the fight and who's going to, more importantly, enjoy all of the fruits of international aid, which family members are going to enjoy the nepotism and get rich at the expense of the Palestinians. Now, not only that, the poll also exposed that the Palestinians truly do believe in biting off the hand that feeds them. At the moment, the support that they've seen from the international community over the years, as expressed by really tremendous amounts of aid being poured into the Palestinian cause, they basically hate everyone. They see 98% see the role that played by the United States as something which is particularly negative. Now, the United States gives the Palestinian cause, whether it be UNRWA, whether it be the Palestinian Authority, direct or indirect aid, US aid, somewhere in the region of $600 million. And that they are by far the biggest single contributor. And yet the Palestinians still see their role in the conflict as something completely negative. So imagine giving these people millions and millions and millions of dollars, and they still hate you. But that's exactly the situation. The same with the Europeans, who are so critical of Israel and so supportive of the Palestinians, and yet they are also taken to task and hated by the Palestinians. They express fundamentally racist views. When asked why the Western countries support Israel, their answers were not, well, because it's just the decent thing to do. You can't accept massacres of men, women, children, babies, and decapitating people. But rather their answers were because of the Israel lobby, obviously the Jews controlling world leaders as part of that really inherent anti-Semitic tropes that are being expressed all the times. And then their alternative answers were because, well, the world hates the Muslims and the world hates the Arabs. Really two answers which go together as this expression of, well, it can't just be common decency, as I said. It has to be something against the Arabs. And obviously in that wider spectrum, they express tremendous support for the Palestinian terrorist organizations. Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, enjoy tremendous support, over 80% support, whereas the Palestinian Authority, which the Biden administration and some others are trying to now tout as the potential leaders of a future Hamas-free Gaza. The Palestinians really do, and this isn't the only survey that expresses this sentiment. The Palestinians hate the Palestinian Authority. They see them as corrupt, abusive, and dictatorial, and they would like to see them go. So this idea of imposing them not only on the people in Judea and Samaria, but also on the people in Gaza is really a non-starter if you ask the Palestinians. But it still seems to be somewhat of an idea that really the U.S. administration and even the Europeans are touting around. The final maybe interesting point of that survey was that the Palestinians believe that they are going to win this war. It possibly goes into all types of other narratives that they see around, that they believe that eventually the Arab countries will rise up and invade Israel and annihilate Israel, that they see themselves as having the capabilities of destroying Israel, that eventually Iran and Hezbollah, as General Avivi explained, will also be part of this onslaught on Israel. That's their little own delusional point that they're in, and maybe it can be explained from a different point of view. Maybe the answer is that they don't see winning as necessarily winning on the battleground, but rather what one of their leaders, Khalil al-Khaya, recently said to the New York Times, when he was asked, well, didn't you expect that the onslaught, that the massacre on the 7th of October will bring a massive response and that many Palestinians were killed? And his answer, similar to other answers that have been given by Palestinian leaders, Hamas leaders, is that they don't really care. They don't value the lives of the Palestinian people anyway, and they don't really care if Palestinians die. Their goal is to put the Palestinian subject onto the world stage again, and if that's what they see victory as, that everyone's talking about the Palestinians, then they certainly have won, because really everyone is talking about the Palestinians and trying to come up with all types of ridiculous ideas and really obscenities, like Secretary General Guterres saying that the October 7 massacre didn't happen in a vacuum. And things like that. So really, they're enjoying this widespread support of all of the UN organizations. So from that point of view, maybe they are correct in their assessment that they perceive that they're going to win.
So in addition to the war in Gaza, we're focused on Hezbollah, on Iran, on Yemen, but with 75% of Palestinians supporting the October 7th massacre, what is Israel to do in Judea and Samaria?
Well, so the truth of the matter is that actually there was a higher level of support within that 75% for the massacre from the Palestinians in Judea and Samaria. They're no different. They're really no different from the Gazans. It's the same organizations. It's the same leadership that they've had for the last 30 years. This is really the fruits of the poisonous fruits, I would say, of the Oslo Accords, where you impose this hateful Palestinian leadership on the Palestinian people. It teaches the Palestinians generations after generations, using the school system, the media, and everything around it to want to hate, kill, and be killed, and destroy Israel on the way. So really, I don't think there's much hope for any type of, obviously, peace in Judea and Samaria, until really what we need to do in Gaza, and what we will need to do really afterwards, also in Judea and Samaria, is a very deep idea of denazification, in the same way as the Allies had to really destroy the Nazi ideology in post-World War II. That's what Israel will have to do in Gaza. Possibly, if the international community can join in, obviously that would be great. But also thereafter in Judea and Samaria, uprooting this constant insidious brainwashing that has been the part of the Palestinian Authority for the last 30 years. That's something which we will have to deal with sooner or later. Possibly now we'll deal first with Gaza, and then we'll have to see where we go on from there.
We have a question that came in that I want to ask you. It's a big question, and we're very short on time, so we'll have to get the highlights. But the idea of administrative detention is being discussed extensively in the international media, and Americans are not so accustomed or familiar with what this works, why it's just in Israel, and many Americans are left without the language and the arguments to defend what Israel does. Can you speak about that for a moment?
So in just a few sentences, administrative detention is not something that is specific or unique to Israel. It's a measure that is used for anti-terrorism in many countries around the world. It has its basis previously also in international law, but specifically in Article 78 of the Fourth Geneva Convention, where it says that an occupying power can put people in administrative detention. It was used by the Americans. Let's not forget what we're talking about in Guantanamo Bay. The terrorists who were arrested in Afghanistan, in Iraq, and taken to Guantanamo, that is a form of administrative detention as well. Let me give you an example of previous use of administrative detention. A terrorist who was arrested in Afghanistan by the Americans, he was then taken to Guantanamo. From there, as a process of rendition, he was sent to Jordan. Jordan eventually put him in jail for a few years, and then they decided, well, he's got a Palestinian passport, let's release him back to Judea and Samaria. This guy came back. We arrested him at the bridge, at the Allenby Bridge, as he came back in, and he told us the following story. He, in 1989, left Judea and Samaria, went to Pakistan to study microbiology. There he got his doctorate in microbiology, and he met a very nice gentleman, as he described him, called Ayman al-Zuhairi. Ayman al-Zuhairi really liked his capabilities and his ideology, and decided to introduce him to his good friend so that he could help his good friend also forward his goals. Obviously, we know who Ayman al-Zuhairi's good friend was. It was Osama bin Laden. And this terrorist then proceeded to set up the first biological warfare laboratory for Osama bin Laden and for Al-Qaeda. This guy is now in Israel. He is a Salafist. He is a homicidal terrorist with proven capabilities to create dirty bombs. What do you do with him? Who wants to live next door him? And so not only him, you have a whole spectrum of people who have these specific intentions to carry out terrorist attacks. Some of them we know because we have informants within the cells. If anyone has ever read the book of The Green Prince, Musab Hassan Youssef, the son of one of the founders of Hamas, he describes how he was providing information to Israeli intelligence sources, and by that, and because of the information, we were able to avert terrorist attacks by putting terrorists in administrative detention. Obviously, we couldn't put them on trial because we would have exposed the fact that he was our informant. But we have such a valuable informant in such a pivotal position, giving us information to save lives. And that's really what administrative detention is. Just as a final word, administrative detention is the balance between the right to life of Jews and the right to freedom of terrorists. I think in that equation, it's very, very clear. The right to life trumps, and terrorists belong behind bars. Sometimes it's an administrative detention, which is, again, a measure not only included in, but also approved by international law.
Very well said. General Avivi, are you still with us for some closing remarks?
Yeah, I think that was very, very interesting what Maurice talked about. Maurice spent many years in the prosecution in Judea and Samaria, and has interrogated many terrorists, also the understanding, the motivation, and psychology. And I think one of the interesting things I heard from Maurice's experience is how much motivation money gives to terrorists. The payment is quite a big thing, which motivates terrorists to carry terror attacks, whether it's for them or for the families. And therefore, the billions that the Palestinian Authority pays is a big generator of terror, and the Palestinian Authority doesn't just pay people from the PLO. They are also the ones paying Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, all these different organizations that carry out attacks, and then the Palestinian Authority funds them in jail and also their families. So really, when we are talking about rooting terror, there is a lot to do, including the education and maybe making sure that in the future there will be no UNRWA also in Gaza, which is really the one organization that perpetuates the reality of Palestinians wanting to go back to Haifa, Tel Aviv, and so on, all this education that they need to destroy Israel. So thank you all. Thank you all for taking the time for the webinar, and we'll see you tomorrow.
And thank you, General Avivi. Thank you, Lieutenant Colonel Maurice Hirsch. It's a privilege and a pleasure to have you both with us. Thank you to all of our supporters and our viewers. We'll see you again tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Take care, everyone. Stay strong. Stay safe.